Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this panel discussion centered around Unootha Mag and its efforts with regards to honing in and building community. We have here the founder of Unootha, Fatima, and various participants of Unootha, Nof, Ghada, and Dana. I would like to take this moment to introduce myself. My name is Munira Al Sayegh, and I'll be moderating the conversation, and would like to take this moment for each participant to introduce themselves and their role within Unootha.
Okay, my name is Fatima Jarman. I'm Unootha's founding editor-in-chief, but most of my work wouldn't matter if it weren't for the other individuals in the panel. So,
should I go second? Okay, fine. My name is Unootha. I'm a member of Unootha as a staff writer, but also various other things that help, the collective and the group. Yeah, over to Dana.
Hi everyone, my name is Dana Rashid. I'm from Kuwait. I create content for Unootha. I'm content creator for Unootha, and in the last issue, I have been helping in translating and editing translations.
And hi everyone, my name is Ghada. I'm a contributor for Unootha.
Fantastic. Lovely to have you guys all on board. I'm very excited to start this conversation. Both Fatima and I have been discussing, loads about what the role of Unootha is, and in particular what the role of Unootha has become during this time and during this pandemic season or spectrum of time that doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. We kept going back and forth and having lots of conversations, and we kept going back to the importance of the community. And I think that Unootha has provided the community of strong, solid women, creatives who have participated within within this community. And I would like to perhaps maybe start this conversation with this question to open to all of the participants on the panel. But if you were to define community, how would you define that?
Okay, so I think first of all, in terms of defining community, it's from how I see it right now, it's a network that elevates voices, and specifically within the dynamics of our communities, it's more important, so important right now to diversify voices, elevate different experiences, especially what it is of MENA women, creative MENA women, going back to knowing that there are so many male dominated spaces or spaces that are not very open to certain voices. I think that's where community plays a vital role. I don't know about others. Dana, Ghada, if you can pitch in.
I can come in. Oh, you can go ahead.
No, all right. I'll be very brief. I think community basically is a group of people who are like-minded, who share the same vision and similar experiences as women, young women in the Middle East region. I think that's the thing that unites us. And what's really fascinating is that many of us have not even met each other in real life. Yet, I strongly feel a sense of community.
Yeah, I have a similar concept. For me, it's more about a community is a place where you don't really have to explain yourself so much. And so it's that same like-mindedness. And for me, the reason I like the Unootha mag or these mags in general, because I was raised in abroad, so I was raised in the US. And so for me, I've never really had a community here that is, it's usually very pan-Arab or very loosely, we have the same kind of values, things like that. So being able to do that online and have that transcend borders, transcend any social class, a lot of these things that you would not be able to do in person, I think it's really valuable. And you don't really have to explain yourself because we're all kind of doing the same thing within it, whether it's art or whether it's a culture or whatever. So for me, that's what I like about the concept of community.
Fatima, let me direct this question back to you now, and I think that it's a privilege to be able to hone in on elevating voices, and I think that as women we all stand in solidarity towards one another, be it pan-Arab women on this panel, and I'm curious to know perhaps if you could maybe direct us or start us off with how Unootha has defined this community and what pushed you to allow for this community to take place. If for the viewers who are going to be coming in onto this talk and listening to this talk, what allowed Unootha to develop into this space that is a safe space, from what I'm hearing, that is a space that elevates voices and experiences, and really allows for this voice of what it means to be a woman within the MENA region to take place. So floor is yours, Fatima.
Right. So when I think about the origins of Unootha, the first thing that comes into my mind is how it came about as a result of so many intersecting parts of my life as the founder. So I came up with the idea when I was 16. And it was this really kind of like strange period in my life where so many things were changing. Obviously, I was going into a young adult. I was trying to just navigate what the next couple of years of my life would look like. And one thing that I thought consistently about is developing a career as a writer. And when you're a young Emirati person in the UAE, resources and spaces to enable you to grow in that manner aren't really accessible. I remember the only thing that like I could think of to somehow maybe like mark myself out as a writer in the community would be like the Emirates Lit Fest. But other than that, there really wasn't anything. I kind of existed in singularity, I guess, instead of in community. I really wasn't able to find my place in that world. It felt so distant. And I think that's where the idea for Unootha came about. In retrospect, it feels a bit like a little selfish thing in my mind. I was desperate for a community. I was desperate for people around me to be inspired by and to grow around. Recently, I was in a creative writing workshop, and my mentor was saying that writers and artists exist in community. We are influenced by each other and our ideas and our stories, and only in that manner are we able to grow. So yeah, the first thing I could think of was, okay, I'll start a lit mag. I came up with the title Unootha really just kind of like out of the blue. There were a few other ideas. I really can't remember any of them, but Unootha just kind of came out and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, because I knew I wanted it to be a space for women, but I also wanted it to be a bit satirical in the sense that like people, when they hear Unootha, they would assume like, oh, this is a really feminine space. But I wanted to use that title to kind of have people come in and then start to see what it means to be a MENA woman in all the various ways that we exist. And yeah, I think it's really hard to, I don't know, like fit in everything into like a single like story of how and why Unootha came about, because it is very nuanced and it comes about from so many different small experiences. But I would say that it came about from me wanting to be a writer. And of course, me being a writer, I would need to be a part of a community. Me being a woman and feeling, I guess, a bit unseen or unheard because there were not enough resources for me. And me also just wanting to trick people into thinking this is a feminine space, but really I wanted to showcase how nuanced MENA women can be. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think the role of accessibility, I mean, it's very important for us to highlight that when discussing communities. I think it's a matter of being accessible towards MENA women that are in the region and also outside of the region, and I think that's a a very valid and very important point that should be highlighted. As it's very difficult to, for example, like get into various programs and things of that nature. So I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about everybody else's role and participation within the community. How have you seen this community grow? What is the sort of impact that has been left for the other creative communities around? I mean, for me, I didn't know about Unootha until Unootha participated in Gulf Now, which is the series that has become an online series for us this year due to COVID, and I was very keen to see, for example, the difference between what Unootha does and what Banat Collective does. And I think the core of Banat is very similar to the core of Unootha. And I'm always somebody who always pushes for more as opposed to less. I think there needs to be more platforms that elevate these voices as opposed to less. Perhaps with Banat it's more visual, and with Unootha it is more of a writing platform. But I'd be curious to hear from everybody else, how this has helped you define yourselves within a community, and also elevating your own voices through this platform, and then just to see how those puzzle pieces fit the overall scheme of what is Unootha.
I'll jump in then first. So I think I was amongst the first people, one of the very few first people that joined in Unootha as like part of the family team. I'll call it family team because we're more like a family. There was definitely the aspect of having an online community, but there was also the sense that there needs to be offline touch or an offline community aspect of it. Because on one side, accessibility is an issue, and I think it's for all of, whether they're platforms or initiatives, I would say predominantly in the UAE, but it's as well having a safe environment of non-judgment. It's easy to be a critic to someone else's work. And I think here's where Fatima really does a great job in terms of when people submit their work, for example, there is no sense of judgment towards how good that person is or where they're at. So it allows for a space for people to grow, to experiment, throughout the 2 years, there were so many experiments into what should be the issue theme, or what kind of work should we look at, interactions, which developed into the recent programming for community circles that have been done, as well as the podcast that comes along with the issue. So we try to give as much space to the community and to the contributors, and putting their needs first before anything. Then it's about the Unootha team. So the core was always to see a circulation of women growing and benefiting from that contact. I'd love to hear from Donna and Ghada, honestly, because they're one of the most contributing people.
If you guys could also maybe elaborate on the community circles, I'd be very keen to hear about that.
Yeah, Donna, I think you were part of the community circle, and as well as Ghada. So
I think just to lay down some context, so we started this community outreach programs throughout the summer, because we weren't able to do any offline work, obviously, because of COVID. We had a lot of plans that were canceled. So we were trying to kind of be innovative and come up with something that could work during these times. So we thought it would be a really great idea to hold these small community circles that were essentially just groups of contributors to specific sections of the magazine. And we just kind of chill and read our work and discuss that. Yeah.
And I did find the circles to be quite nurturing in the sense, really nurturing for the community. I want to talk a little bit about my experience and in relationship to Unootha. So before Unootha came about, I do think that as a content creator, there were very limited platforms where I can really share my content without it really being heavily edited and with, you know, and also سقف الحرية, the freedom that I'm able to gain in Unootha is really high. So as someone who writes professionally, a lot of magazines do not accept many topics, and they have a very narrow set of even formats, even choice of words. So they could be very stifling, but that's not something that I experienced with Unootha. Pre-Unootha, I was really yearning and really dying for a platform to showcase my work. And I participated from the second issue, I believe, which is the body image issue. And I think it's a very prevalent topic, especially in the Gulf region, and especially in Kuwait, where we have a lot of fashionista culture, unfortunately, that tells women to look in a very specific way. So because I feel very strongly and very passionately about this topic, and also because I have known about some contributors from Kuwait to Unootha, and this is how I found out about Unootha magazine. This really encouraged me to submit my work, and seeing the amount of support, the amount of nourishment as a community, and as Nof said, the amount of non-judgment and high level of freedom, it really made me continue working with Unootha.
Yeah, so for me, I just started, I had been posting on Instagram, I'd made my own account, and I was kind of just looking for places to get that inspiration from, like Fatima was mentioning earlier. And so I was trying to look in the traditional spaces. So there's South Asian spaces, there's East Asian spaces, there's different cultural groups, but I was having a really hard time finding Arab groups, at least in the US or within the regions that I knew. And I was struggling, and then I started finding Bennett Collective and Unootha Mag and Daftar Aswad, all these different niche, well, niche for me, mags, not niche for you. And so yeah, and so once I started looking into it, I was like, okay, I really need to put this on my radar, and I want to apply. I need to meet people, because again, I don't really have many people here, and I'm still struggling to find people here. So I'm maybe I need to do something myself, so that way people like me can actually have connections here too and be connected more broadly. But that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, and so when I applied to, or when I contributed to Unootha, they asked me to, or y'all asked me to present my work. And when I presented my work, it was such, like Dana had said, it was a really comforting or nourishing place, because I don't have a lot of people, so it wasn't something I've done before, but people were very accepting of my work. They wanted to hear about my experiences, and they resonated with my experiences. And it was a very it was an environment where you can have that feedback, right? On demand. Also, you're presenting and people are commenting in the Zoom chat. So it's nice. It feels like an Instagram live in a way. But so yeah, I mean, I think I really did need that kind of space. And that's why I continued to do these projects with Unootha, because I've never been to the Gulf. I've never been to this region, but besides Egypt, where my family's from. But other than that, it's just that connection, I really feel it. And I want to continue having more of those connections. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I continue to be here. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think this is, this is all very important, and I found you guys through Fatima, and everybody else found Fatima through Unootha, and I think that this is This is wonderful, and it's again, I stress in my work that there's nothing that can happen without community, and nothing that can happen without a strong network, and we are here to elevate each other's voices, and that's extremely important in order to sort of like leave our footprint in the creative industries that we're all in, and it's, you know, it's a matter of creating this accessibility for everybody. And you know, I think it's fantastic, Ghada, that you're in the States, and yet your community is rooted here very much in the Gulf, and I think this sort of virtual existence has become a reality for all of us, you know, in this day and age. And you know, I'd be curious to hear about past themes, and also future themes or present themes that have been percolating for Unootha with regards to you know, how to continue to exist during this time, and you know, what those voices are, what those experiences are. I know Fatima and I had that discussion a while ago when we first called off everything with Art Dubai for this year. And so I'd be keen to see perhaps maybe we can backtrack a little and start with the first sort of, let's say, 3 themes, and then maybe try to tie them back into the present, and how we can cultivate this creative community to participate during this time of COVID and this time of online existence.
I was gonna add something after Nof was speaking, because she was talking about experimenting with Unootha and about how the space is very non-judgmental, and I was gonna add that I feel like that's a two-way sort of relationship, that we as Unootha also have that like freedom to experiment and change things up, just as the contributors do. So I think you'll see, I think when I reflect back on our earlier issues, I don't know about what Nof would say, and I don't know what Ghada and Dana would say, but in my mind, I relate them, in my mind, they feel a bit, like you can tell that we were just starting off. That's how, yeah. I was 17 at the time when I think the first issue came about. But when I think back at that time, I just feel like, wow, I was so young and I had no idea what was going on. So I'd be interested to see what Nof thinks of the first set of issues.
I think I joined in, was it like a little bit before the second?
Right.
Before the second issue, and I saw the process. So like I think how the issue theme came about was due to kind of things that Fatima and others have like experienced. So it's like, okay, this is something that we're currently talking about, so why not collect them in one place and kind of curate an experience or different experiences from people, whether it's through visual arts or articles and essays and poetry. And then later on, I think it came more to towards okay, let's see what our capacity as a team we're able to do, and then set general themes or patterns that we're viewing it throughout the year. Because like, for example, if I think this is just from our drafts, we had things about like myths and mythology and folklore. We had like the period, which was something that came, like was on the list and it just came first, and that was like, is that the 3rd issue or 4th issue?
That's the 5th issue.
Oh, 5th issue. But a lot of it stems from reflecting and looking at wider patterns or trends or experiences that we in the region are like currently experiencing or reflecting on, and it's a consistent topic. Like, for example, you have this wave of people concerned about eco-living. So why not talk about that or have an issue relating to that. So it just came about that way.
Yeah, I don't think we go ahead, Dana.
I just want to commend Fatima and the ladies on their very brave choice of topics. Each issue really discusses a very pressing matter, from mental issues, and these are issues that are not typically talked about in the region. Mental issues, body image, menstrual cycle. That's something that all women experience, but it's not talked about. So I really commend Fatma, Nof, and everyone else who is working on the magazine on such choice. And I just want to add one more thing. In terms of the choice of naming Unootha, I think it's a very clever choice because it redefines what we think Unootha should be.
Right.
So I think it's very, very clever, and also because the name is very warm and very relatable. So it kind of, it's not off-putting, if I may say. Like certain magazines are very counterculture, and it may be shocking for people, and they may not digest it very well. But when you choose a title that is soft, you choose a title that is welcoming, that is warm, and that the ear is really used to. I think it's, but at the same time, you redefine what that term is. I think it's very clever. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
So you wanted to say something, Fatima?
The way I don't remember.
I'm super sorry if I cut you off.
No. I think what I was gonna say is that we kind of like we bounce around sort of with the issues. I don't think we take it too seriously, to be honest. We just sit around and we go like, okay, let's like think of a couple of themes. And I remember I was in a Zoom call, I think a few months ago, with a team member. Her name is Shayma Al-Harfi. She is the Arabic editor at Unootha, and she's also a staff writer. And we just sat down and we were naming objects in our room. And that was us like making a list of possible themes in the future. So it's very, honestly, it's a combination of us being intentional and like trying to think of pressing matters, but it's also just us having fun and trying to think of something also abstract and maybe weird and abnormal. Because when I think about Unootha, I think of it as a space that is totally undefined. We have no boundaries. We're always experimenting. We're always changing things up. Yeah, so we don't really have like a trend or pattern with themes in my, I guess, like periphery or vision. Yeah.
How would you say Unootha has developed during the last few months? How would you say that the surroundings and sort of like the overwhelming feeling of fear and the unknown, let's say, that we've all experienced? How has that defined what you guys are doing now? I remember you were talking to me, Fatima, about location and that edition that you guys were looking at, and how can we redefine location during this time, and maybe if you can just kind of talk us through that a little bit more, but also to get us to a point that you guys are in the present tense, and also maybe like folding in the community and how it's responded accordingly.
Nof and I have an anecdote in relation to like coming up with the issue theme, so you can go ahead and share that if you want.
Which one though?
The one where we came up with it, like, yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about?
During
yeah.
So we were trying to prep for the year. So we attempted to do an annual calendar, which got pushed and pushed and pushed. So it was
this is June 2019, right? Like that period. So like honestly, a year ago.
I have no recollection of time anymore.
Okay.
Nada. But I remember us, we set up a meeting so we could sit down. We wanted to do a lot of like proposal writings. We wanted to put a calendar down for the year, and you know, just brainstorm. So like we sat on the table and we're just throwing ideas at each other. And it's usually Shayma is the quiet one. So she's quiet and silent the whole entire time, but at the end she has something brilliant to say. And it's she's like, I always tell her, okay, think loud, because I'm usually the person who thinks loud in the teams. It's like, how about this, how about that, how about this, what about just write everything down and then at the end we'll just see what happens. And Fatma's the one who's very hesitant about the idea, so I, you know, like it's like pushing her to just say it, just say there aren't any stupid ideas. So that combination is very hilarious. So it makes the team, the operations, communication just so much fun for us to come about. And then it just happens and it just builds onto paper, and we're like, okay, just do it. And I mean, a lot. I don't remember what happened because, wait, yeah,
okay.
That
my
was,
memory is better.
It was last year, and then COVID happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So we came up with the theme locations and spaces. I think it was set to like be the theme in November 2019. So it was supposed to like come about like winter of 2019 towards the end. And then I don't know, we delayed it for some reason, and then we just released it. We announced it, and then COVID hit. So what we had originally planned and what we had already envisioned for the locations and spaces theme had like turned upside down, and it had like formed its own meaning with time. Yeah, and then we had like anticipated, I think, pieces about maybe the diaspora, things that like we would have like originally thought of last year when we think about locations in space. And it just manifested into something else completely. Yeah.
How can we define, if we may jump into that, like how do you feel like the community has redefined it during this time? I mean, you know, space and location is something that perhaps we all struggled with at the beginning of COVID, but now for me has been redefined on a personal note in a completely different way. And it's a matter of movement. It's a matter of like even the simplest movements from, you know, couch to bed, and you know, to cousin's house to back, you know, but even those locations have redefined themselves, and what they've allowed for me to become, or what they've become within themselves have become very different. So I'd be curious to hear from a community note, how, you know, what your findings have been, and how those definitions have been reevaluated.
I think so. With primarily the ideas that we set down for location and spaces was concerning borders, territories, diaspora, privileges, experiences in majlises, for example, being a woman, and you know, like having what's basically space or taking up space really defined for you. So there were a lot of like floating ideas and concepts where people can shape and reimagine on their own. That's why it was called Locations and Spaces. And I think you know, it was that theme by itself was so we found that it was so important to talk about right now at this point, because us as millennials, Gen X, I think the younger generation right now are really redefining what location and space really is, individually, collectively, within society and within community, and borders are changing, and those are conceptual borders. So when COVID-19 happened, and this is something that I've noticed because I was consuming more out of, and it's the free resources right now that we're opening up for us in terms of arts and culture. You know, I could watch opera. I can stream operas right now. I don't have to go into an opera house. The libraries are, all of them, they put them out, like the NYU Arabic Library, for example. You know, like there was a lot to consume. So I was stationary, but I was experiencing more of what's out there where, you know, where I couldn't access. And that's a different experience. Other people could have other experiences where they don't really have good internet connection, for example. Or for example, because of COVID-19, they were part of a list, country list where they can't really travel or go back home. There are people who could, and you know, like they were able to, they had their embassies rescue them, or whatever the experience was. And I think space is such a conceptual term that people are able to really express their ideas. And you know, people were in confinement, so some people went through art blocks. Some people were able to be much more creative at this time. So there were very thought-provoking submissions, and from different angles and perspectives that were part of the issue. And honestly, I've enjoyed it so much as a reader, as a consumer of it. So it definitely was an issue for me that stood out.
I do want to touch up on a few things in terms of Unootha and how I feel that the pandemic has perhaps was a blessing in disguise when it comes to Unootha, because I do feel that it has pushed Unootha to do the inner circles for the poetry and for the, you know, the cultural and communal circles online. So I think perhaps that's a blessing in disguise. Also, I'm not sure if it's pandemic related or not, Fatima may answer, but Unootha has opened now Unootha's journal, which is all year long open. There is no theme. So there is even more freedom for people to submit. And perhaps this is, I find this to be a great chance for people who are in quarantine and may have far less mobility than we are used to.
Yeah, and I think we didn't panic as much. And I think you asked whether there was a sense of panic to get things done. I don't think there was panic at all. We were like, okay, I think Fatima was very sure to kind of not to haste things. So she's like, what if time is in our corner to get things done, we'll get things done. So she doesn't really rush. So I think with that kind of leadership, nobody was in panic. And I think that because we don't have much reliance on external factors to feel like we are in a rush for something.
Yeah, I think sorry, I don't know. I was gonna say, I think one of the positives that we can come out of this like quarantine or pandemic is like it kind of deconstructed a lot of the traditional ways of the ways that we thought things had to happen, right? So like, for example, the journal came out of it and it's like open, but before that maybe it wouldn't have, right? Because like you always have to have some sort of structured magazine coming out every couple of weeks or whatever. And even with like these Zoom calls, right? Like maybe it would have happened in person and you wouldn't have had the same kind of consistency or engagement. So I think like we're reimagining like what you were saying earlier about community, like these locations and spaces, now that they're virtual. I think it's kind of, there's like an element of freedom in it, and that like we don't have to do things the way that we are told is right. And yeah, so I'm excited about it. I think it's a good thing, if we can say there's one positive at least.
Absolutely, and I think I think this is the year of redefinition in all its ways. I mean, we've learned how to become malleable again, and as species of humans, that we're meant to be malleable, but our lifestyles and just the way that we exist has made us more rigid, and rigid to the point where we're no longer human technically, because humans are meant to be able to adapt and are meant to be able to evolve. And I think that that's the biggest lesson learned on a personal note from this year. And on that note, keeping track of time, I would like to bring this conversation back full circle. And Dana had mentioned something that I had really liked, and I think it's a great note for us to close this conversation off on. Is the term Unootha means femininity, for those who don't know, and femininity is not a construct for just the female. It's we're all beings that have both feminine and masculine qualities, and this is what makes us human. And I think that it's very important for us in a region where womanhood or femininity is something that we are held responsible towards, and it's the responsibility of past generations that we have inherited to redefine what it means to be a female in this day and age. And I couldn't think of a better, more suitable panel to have this conversation with, and to kind of abstract the idea of femininity, and to link it back to what women do best, which is lead a group of people and give them a home, technically give them that space of to express, and that safety to express. And I think that that's from hearing everybody speak, I think that that's what Unootha has done very in a very accessible way. And I think maybe just to close off this conversation, we can close it off with if you were to define or redefine Unootha through your experience with Unootha Mag, what and how would you make that redefinition, or what would you reiterate from the past of what we have inherited as females within the region? Big question.
It's a big and very philosophical question, and if I may say, it had made my journey through womanhood and through Unootha, femininity, more introspective, more inwards looking, rather than outwards looking, such as perhaps what media, what society often likes to suggest. So the continuation of redefining what feminine is helps you to get in touch with very soulful and very deep points of this feminine aspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, I think it's mostly about connection, right? So like what we were talking about earlier, like that network aspect of having like-minded individuals, regardless of where they're from or what they're doing or whatever, and being able to come together for something that we're all passionate about.
Fantastic.
I'm trying to think of the proper way to articulate this, but I think the first word that came into my mind is power and choice. So I think, and I also thought of undefined. So I think Unootha in general is undefined, because what it means to be a MENA woman or beyond that is largely individual and personal. And there's no way to you can't limit an individual's life. And I think I think personally my experience, and I think most of you might relate, for a very large chunk of my life, I felt limited by my femininity, because I thought that was all there was to me. But as soon as I kind of recognized the power that I had within myself, I started to realize that what it means to be a MENA woman is whatever I want it to be, and it's personal and individual to each person.
I think I just want to add resilience. I think it's such a because I think part of Unootha is also the journey, and with community being in mind, I think everybody gets to be part of the Unootha journey. So as a collective and as a community, I think that's why.
Fantastic. I think, yeah, I'm honestly very, very inspired by all of you. And I'm very grateful to have met all of you. And I'm very keen to see how Unootha continues to inspire and continues to evolve and continues to elevate voices of femininity from the region, and also breaking stereotypes is something that I personally love to do, and I think all of you do very, 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 very well. To be a woman, in the region has been completely redefined, and because of the likes of you, and the role of the community is at the core of everything that we do. And I would like to take this time to thank you for your time, for participating on this panel. And I'm very keen and curious to see how the audiences respond to this. And I hope it allows for more traction to be gained on Unootha Mag. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.